Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. Here in Boston, it's snowing, so that's nice. Perhaps it's nice where other people are. Anyhow, hi, everyone. Let's see. First item is announcements and highlights. I don't think I have any announcements. Other people? Okay. Issues, questions, PRs people want to discuss. Victor asked us all to please go and review his performance stats work in PR 8239. So I wrote that down.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I just high level what it does is just compares the SQL on the existing scheduled queries, and then if it finds differences, it clears the performance stats on those. So that basic idea there is someone changes the SQL on the scheduled query, it will clear the saved performance stats.
So like previously, if the query name was the same, you'd be getting stats for the old SQL.
Right. In the extreme case, you could have like start with a performance intensive query, and then later on you would optimize it, but you'd still be getting stats for the stats would make it look like it was still taking up a lot of CPU.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a handful of office hours ago, and the feature makes sense. I just haven't looked at the code, so I don't know if other people have looked at the code yet.
I haven't, but I can today. I see it's a pretty small PR too.
Yeah, and I wanted to get this merged because I wanted to start working on another PR, which is to actually persist the performance stats in RocksDB.
Nice. Yeah, and then I see that this probably makes that necessary because if you persist across restarts and then the SQL changes later, then you really have big problems. Okay.
I think the stats are small enough. It doesn't seem terrible putting them in RocksDB, so that makes sense. Okay, cool. Any other PRs people want to make sure we talk about? Anyone feeling blocked by anything? Okay. Agenda. Osquery 511. Kali's been running it for a little while. I think Fleet's been running it for a little while.
2 weeks or more, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm ready to call it stable.
I think I am too. And anyone else test it?
I think it's the usual suspect.
Well, it's probably as stable as it's getting.
And I saw someone updated the changelog this morning. I didn't look at the changes yet, but I had put a review on that.
Oh yeah, I accepted. Yeah, I accepted all your suggestions.
Okay.
And
cool. Thank you, and thank you, Stefano, for putting together the changelog.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, why don't we? I think we can just declare it stable.
Cool.
I will click things. Next agenda item, also from Victor, is about securing client MTLS certificate key pair stuff. This came up, I think, a couple office hours ago, and I think it was supported, and maybe there was some, Stefano said he had a branch somewhere that implemented parts of this, or maybe it was just on Windows. I don't quite remember.
Yeah, briefly, I talked about this because I was working on it on both sides, Windows and macOS. And yeah, right now I'm only working on the Windows side, but I'm also doing the integration with Osquery and taking into account that macOS will have that too. So the integration part should be for both platforms, so cross-platform.
Sorry, Stefano, you said you're doing the integration with Osquery. What is it that you're integrating?
Sorry. So for supporting the MTLS authentication through certificate that are present in the system store, not on the file system, I had to modify, I had to create, a provider for OpenSSL, which means it's basically a separate part of code that you own, that you can either compile to a DLL or statically compile with the rest of the application that uses OpenSSL, and then initialize this provider. And the provider provides what you want. Some of the function of OpenSSL in this specific case functions to find certificates in the Windows Store and also sign the TLS digest without bringing out the private key from the key storage of Windows. And
so OpenSSL library, it provides these functions that integrate with Windows and macOS already?
No, it doesn't, but it permits you to create your custom functionality providers, and those are basically plugins for OpenSSL, and they can substitute the default function that OpenSSL has, which only support a certificate either on file or in memory, and same for the private key.
Stefano, am I super outdated in thinking like at some point we were not using OpenSSL for our TLS client? We were using like some other library. Is that like years outdated now?
No, no. We always use OpenSSL. I think the only discussion maybe we had with other libraries was when a customer from our side brought up the interest with to add FIPS to Osquery, and in that case we basically with OpenSSL it was a bit more difficult to have the support for on all the libraries, but it was related to FIPS, I believe. The discussion of WolfSSL or other.
Zach, I wonder if you're thinking about the HTTP client. We use like Beast as an HTTP client in places.
Yes, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the Beast it's what implements the HTTP communication, but it does use
but not the TLS.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, guys. That is what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I know that one's come up a handful of times, and I don't remember all the details, just that like it makes it harder to do some client cert things, or maybe I don't know.
Well, I mean, no, not really. It's just
like even with the curl table.
So even the curl table is using our HTTP client function, class. Also parts of the AWS like communication where it doesn't need certificates and private keys. It's using the HTTP client for some of the authentication call. So the flow again is to create these plugins, or as OpenSSL calls them, providers. They provide a substitute for the function that OpenSSL normally calls to parse a certificate or get a certificate and use it to authenticate, verify the server certificate, and at the same time sign and verify again the digest itself. Yeah.
As far as configuring, do we need to specify the certificate, or can we automatically find the certificate based on the CA?
No, so oh wait, do you mean the client or the server certificate?
The client certificate, right? The server will send the CAs that it has to the client. Theoretically, the client could find the certificate by the CA.
Well, the client may have multiple matching certs, so I assume we're going to have to grow an option for specifying which cert to present.
Yeah, basically the idea in the setup is the same as we have now, for almost the same for what we have now for the files. So we have to specify which client certificate Osquery wants to present to the server. And you would do that with, we were discussing through Slack, but initially at least with the hash of the certificate itself, which is recognized as, like, I mean, it's the most unique value you can give, and you can see it also in the UI. On Windows, it's called the thumbprint, and on macOS UI is called the fingerprint. Then maybe in the APIs is like, it's called differently. And so the user would pass a flag to Osquery with the hash as a hex string.
Is it possible to allow user to specify the common name?
Yeah, so it is not in it, the logic, but obviously it's possible. The only question is, how do we, like, because the problem is that the common name, I think, is not unique.
Right.
The only thing that is unique is the hash itself.
But it might be unique.
Well, you.
Yeah, but
one approach would be just to pick the first non-expired certificate matching the common name.
Well, I'm thinking a little bit about use cases, right? And like, I can certainly see some customers wanting to say something like, please have Osquery use like the MDM provided certificates, right? And you can't do that with fingerprint because those certificates are going to rotate relatively frequently. So for those things, you kind of want something where you specify a common name or a fragment or a, something. And I don't know if you just pick the newest one or what, but I think some kind of human stable identifier, which isn't the same as a checksum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it does make sense. So I have to say, I have asked also our customer for feedback about this. So we are also waiting on that side. But yeah, it does make sense for the I haven't thought about the MDM case where you have to rotate the certificate. So and so that's another thing, because would you want to rotate and Osquery pick it up while it's running? Because so this is another thing I haven't tested, to be fair, and I don't know if it's already a feature that is with the current implementation.
Well, once the handshake is done, is it good at that point? Like, even if it gets rotated?
Assuming I would think assuming the underlying connection is being reused, but at some point that probably times out and then needs to be renegotiated.
So I'm more thinking about across connections, because currently, I mean, a connection by default doesn't have any keep alive, so a single request then closes the connection. And actually, okay, so this is an aside, but we have a flag to enable or to increase the session timeout to try to reuse the same connection, but there are bugs around it. And I will not, so at least for these new provider, I will disable the keep alive functionality for now. But yeah, otherwise, every connection has and creates a new OpenSSL context. So there is the chance to insert a new certificate. Well, yeah, use a new certificate, get a new certificate if the flag has changed. Yeah, the only thing I haven't yet thought about all the possible issues. But yeah, I think the only issues is making it work, well, fixing the session timeout, but not in this instance, and then making it work with that functionality.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an interesting question of like what happens if, you know, you go to open the connection, you don't have a good cert.
Maybe at that point, if you fail to connect, then check if you have a new certificate in the key store.
I feel like it'd be better to check first, right? Because if you were doing any kind of server monitoring, you wouldn't want to like kind of get an expected, bad client that then comes back. So you'd almost rather just have the client check before trying to make a connection.
I mean, if we're already doing a whole like TLS negotiation, which sounds bad, and I'm surprised that that's been the case for a long time and we haven't run into issues. But if we're already doing that, it seems like checking for a new key insert is probably pretty minor relative to the full negotiation.
Yeah, probably. I think there's also something in here around how you specify things. Like I feel like right now we probably have a certificate command line flag that expects a file path. But if we started supporting fingerprints or like common name strings or anything else, I feel like I would ideally stick that all to the same command line variable and use something like a URI, right? So you end up with like, it assumes you mean a file, and if you have like fingerprint : / then we'll go and read it out of the system search stores. And if you've got like common name or CN : / because I think if we ended up with multiple command line flags, then you start getting other things about like, well, which one do you follow? And the UX just doesn't feel good.
Okay,
but
yeah, sorry.
It might be premature to talk about that.
No, I mean that's fine. It makes sense. So yeah, you would use again the TLS. For instance, currently the flag is TLS client cert, and then use like a schema before it. So if it's, as you said, like I don't know, file colon, and then the path uses a file out of the y hash. So double colon. It's using a hash, and then something like that.
Yeah.
See what it is.
Mm-hmm. Victor, you had created this agenda item. Maybe you wanted this conversation to go in a different direction. So let me.
Well, I mean, I'm also not super familiar with mutual TLS. So I'm kind of learning about it. But I guess, I guess I favor using a common name and then just using some policy to pick a certificate if there's multiples.
I meant more like what did you want to get out of this agenda item?
Yeah, I guess Victor, when I remember when we last discussed, we were trying to figure out whether it was going to work for our use case to just pass the cert in with the environment variable, which I see you put in the agenda here. Like, do you want to see that as an option as well? Or is what Stefano's talking about, like, going to satisfy?
I think what Stefano is doing is to to use the system APIs to generate the signature is the kind of the right end goal that we want to get to. So that the private key is like completely secure and Osquery never accesses it. But if Fano is, if we are unable to get this feature in the next release, then I guess the next best thing for us would be pass it using an environmental variable.
I think it makes sense for me. I cannot make too many guarantees on when this will land. So I would obviously, and my customer too would like to have it on the next release. But yeah, there has been a couple of complications on how to properly write those providers with OpenSSL, and there is some refactoring to do to now plug it in Osquery properly, and also keep both of the functionalities, so like the system store and still the old way for whoever wants to use the old way yet still.
Is there work here that you could hand off or get help with from Victor? Like, I don't know if this is all just sort of, you got to write one proof of concept and then it's tractable or what?
So if you would like to have the end variable solution for earlier, then yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
I think it will not be difficult to integrate it as an option together with the rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So I can make a PR for. That would be a new switch, or would we want to do this URI approach?
What are you thinking you'll make a PR for?
To add a switch instead of passing a file as a certificate and the file as a private key to.
Where will the certificate live? I don't understand yet.
Well, my understanding is the context is we want FleetD, like our Osquery wrapper, to be able to pick up a certificate and pass it into Osquery for Osquery to use. So FleetD would inject it into the environment for the Osquery process.
So you would have an external agent software, fetch it out of the store and put it on disk.
No, into the environment.
So you would put the raw certificate
on disk already works.
Right.
On disk is already supported.
So you would put the raw certificate into just like as a giant base64 environmental blob.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in theory, it could be like the PEM or something.
I mean, whatever.
It doesn't have to be like base64.
Whatever. I don't care formats. What's the benefit of over putting it on disk?
Well, it won't be on disk anymore.
Well, sort of.
It's
still accessible through proc, at least on systems that support proc, and it's accessible through some forms of process listing on some systems. So, like, is it actually any more secure? Is maybe what I'm hinting at.
I mean, it might be securer by default just because, well, if you run Osquery as root, then technically you should have root to see those environment variables, but otherwise the file on the file system can land on a folder that is not properly protected. So
Yeah, that's easy though.
That's so yeah.
It also won't stay on the file system.
Yeah. I think if you want to pass it through the environment, I would probably try and think about how to do that without adding an environmental variable, without adding another command line switch. I guess you have to add at least one. Maybe the way to do it would be to like the certificate switch now accepts a file. So if we bake a URI there that looks like environment : / environment variable name, right? Then you're telling it to go read it out of the environment. Does that make sense?
I mean, it seems like you could do it without adding a command line switch. Like if there was an Osquery _TLS cert client cert environment variable that you looked up, then use that. It seems a little inconsistent.
No,
with
I think
how we've done other things.
Yeah, I'm suggesting. I feel like I have to go look up the.
It also seems like it's probably a stopgap until Stefano's solution is in place. But since it sounds like there's an indefinite timeline on that, it kind of makes sense.
I mean,
Okay,
this is in common also with my implementation, but the idea is Osquery should know which method or which certificate to use. Like, to be fair, I was a bit unsure, dubious on giving error or not if a user would give the the TLS certificate flags for taking the certificate on the file system, or not if they ask for the system store to be used. So what I'm saying is, yeah, even if you have the the name of the environment variable, maybe the user is configuring everything. I know it sounds weird, but maybe in some cases they have both configurations. I don't know. Yeah, and you want to know which one to use. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an anti-pattern to introduce new configuration parameters because it will create ordering issues, right? Of like, oh, do I have the environment variable of this other thing? But I just dumped in chat, right? We have a TLS client cert thing that currently just expects a path. So just make up some bullshit URI scheme there. I've certainly seen that in other tools where, if you have env and then, env : whatever, and it'll read the data out of an environmental variable.
Okay.
Like the old Apple code signing tools used to use that. They moved away from it, but and I guess it would just be env : not env : // but I don't know, whatever. Do something reasonable looking.
I guess it sounds like what I'm hearing is there's like agreement on the idea of doing this as a stopgap measure if we want to, and then the exact design is probably somewhat up to Victor, and we should make sure that it's agreed upon before merging.
Thank you for asking. I think I would say that I feel ambivalent about reading it out of the environment. Not that I would stop you, I just don't totally see the point. And I probably feel most strongly that whatever the user-facing configuration surface is feels coherent to me in the light of this work, the existing code base, Stefano's work, future work. So that's probably, I just care a little bit about effectively the customer UX here. And yeah, otherwise I think whatevs. Stefano, is that where are you landing on that?
Yeah, and actually, I mean, from the UX point of view, I'm also wondering how. So, do you see valuable for the end user to choose with which let's call it store specifically certificate in the system store is stored on. Because currently, for instance, for Windows,
keychain or
sorry, go ahead.
Like which keychain that it's in, for example, on Mac, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that will be one. Yes, it will be the equivalent on Windows. Yeah.
I mean, I think on Mac we would just want to get it out of the system keychain.
Yeah.
There's something like that.
The modern Mac APIs don't let you specify what keychain. You're just searching for items based on attributes, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
They're like abstracting all the keychain stuff away.
Yes, which is a little surprising when things end up being in different keychains.
So yeah, admittedly, I haven't looked. Like I looked enough to see that a common UX could be written, and there weren't huge issues. But I'm less aware on how exactly the macOS API work. I was wondering on the so you say probably on macOS you don't have to select the keychain, so in a sense it's better. I think the issue on Windows is that you have two categories. So the first is that either like you can get all the stores for the current user, which mean they are all the store, like the content contains all the stores that are on the machine, which are shared between all the users, plus all the plus specifically, at least by default, the personal named like that store, which is where I was thinking a user have to put the client certificate for Osquery to find it, because even if you have the hash, you still have to select specifically which store in the collections of store you want.
And the user is not able to see the system store?
No, they are able, but it's just so right now, again, the client certificate, it's taken from the personal store, and it's using the stores from the current user, which though means that when you launch Osquery as a service on Windows, the current user is the local system, which is possible to access the again the personal store of the local system user. It's at least from UI, it's a bit a roundabout way.
Yeah, I don't know how to access that store.
I wonder what comment, Stefano, is what you're saying, that you have to select what store you search for the fingerprint in?
Not currently. So the question is, do the user want? So since the implementation I have makes the choice for the user, which is use the collections of stores from the current user. For the client certificate, select or search the certificate in the personal store, and for the CAs, search into the trusted and in the intermediate stores, and that's it. But then a user can create custom stores. So the question is not only the question is not only for the custom stores, but also in general, do the user wants to have the ability to specifically say, okay, please also search the client certificate here, and the same thing for please also add these CAs from this other store. Obviously, this complicates things a bit, but yeah.
I don't think so. I think if we just tell the users that certificates have to be in the system store, I don't know how to put them there on Windows. I assume there's a way to put them in the local system store.
I might say that if we discover we need to do it differently, we could change it. I mean, but I wonder if we would change that. If I think about URI style things, I wonder if we would change that with a different URI provider, or if we would come up with some search syntax for the URL path, or what other entities use, or if we would just enumerate all the stores and then try them one at a time. It all sounds very ugly. I don't know what other people do.
In the Windows API, you have to specify the store when you're searching for a certificate.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't there a default that it goes to?
Depends on the certificate itself. So if it's a CA, then it normally suggests you again the trusted route, and if it's or the intermediate, again if it's not a root CA, and then again, yeah, your own certificates for that are not CAs. I normally suggest the personal one. There are others, obviously, and yeah, I mean, this question exists also for my customers, so I'm waiting feedback about that just to see if they have any specific configuration there. And I was asking here if there was any maybe colliding interest in not having right now a hard-coded choice. But yeah, it seems that the hard-coded choice for now is fine.
Yeah, I feel like the most secure choice is system store.
Yeah, so yeah.
I don't think I know enough to have an opinion.
Okay, so sounds like Stefano will continue working on this. I will work on a PR to add ENV support. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that works for me.
And I think we do want Stefano to support common name.
Yeah.
I also think whatever we end up with, it sounds like we're going to end up with a little bit of nuance around what is this, how do we search the system store, and how do we specify alternate stores. And I kind of imagine some of that will be clear as you write code. Like maybe the UI, maybe the underlying things will sort of present a reasonable pattern here. Or I don't know what. Feels like all the things that should be easy but are somehow remarkably hard.
Yeah, I did not. So I wasn't sure in how it. Like the reason why I didn't go right ahead with a simple path, like path parsing or generating a schema, is that initially I wasn't sure how easy was that to dynamically translate it to the path of the store on both platforms. But funnily enough, even OpenSSL itself internally, when you are creating your provider and asking it to do things, they use a query, like you are, well, let's say sort of forced to invent your own schema internally to point to a store or something like that. So that sounds similar to what we want to do here.
Yeah. Either you use XPath or you make up something that fundamentally smells a little bit like XPath, but with less new lines or something. Okay. People want to talk about anything else? If not, we could end, 20-ish minutes early. Okay. Thank you all for code involvement, conversations, and all the other things people do. I think we're probably good for today.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, and
Right.
congrats on the release. And
Yeah.
there we go.
Welcome to 2024.
Yeah.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.